That I'm not sure. I can look into that and see if there'll be a warranty.
That'd be good. I can't imagine there will be for an old clock, so.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, let's call the vote. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay, next up, reports from board liaisons. What do we have? Summertime. Okay. Next up, new business. Next up, old business. 6A, discussion on 506 Chaumont Drive matter.
Hi, guys. Again, Greg Stagliano. I live on Chaumont Drive here in Villanova. Thanks. I first want to thank you for your time, your attention, and I want to thank you for your service. I understand that you don't get paid for this, and maybe this particular thing isn't what you think you signed up for, but perhaps it is. I'm not here as an attorney tonight. This is not a court. I'm not looking for a hearing today. I'm a resident of Longstanding who's been victimized by first his new neighbor and then my own township employees. And hence, I've got nowhere left to turn other than filing a lawsuit and going to court, but to come to you good folks. Because I, despite what's going on in Washington and that idiot Trump, I believe that it's still of, by, for the people. That's our government. So as a consequence, you and me are the township, not Mr. Norsini, not Mr. White. They're employees. You and I are the township. And Mr. Rice, he's way down the line. He's a non-employee vendor, so he barely counts. But what has happened is that I'm also here as a concerned citizen that I want to make sure that what happened to me, what has happened to me over the course of the last several years, which has tried every aspect of my patience, hurt me physically, financially, I want to make sure it doesn't happen to anybody else. Because you probably don't know this, you may know some of this, but if you're on, I don't know if you know Chaumont Drive, but Chaumont Drive is a small little one, cul-de-sac street. All the homes on the right-hand side, and I'm the second one in, they all slope upward. And they go up to the highest point. And the highest point, I think, is achieved at Mr. Aliba's property, which is my new next-door neighbor with whom I've had the trouble, and where my rear yard and his intersect, all the way up where you're like basically at Christ Church's rental house that's back there. Got it? So that's your visual. But it used to be that way until Mr. Aliba moved in, got cited 1 million times by the township for breaking literally every code law you have, work without permits. He even went so far as to have one plumber sign up, get the permit approved as that plumber, use somebody else. And then poor Andy Pancoast, who was burned to death by this dude, Andy had to go find out and had to go talk to the plumber whose name was on the permit, and that guy fessed, I got nothing to do with that job. And so Andy had to call out Mr. Aliba and say, hey, because that's, I think, a crime when you get a permit from a municipal entity fraudulently. But set that aside for a second. So let me backtrack. This happens he buys in 2020. He invests a year in the interior construction, and then he starts spending time in the exterior. Takes down all of the nice trees that Mr. Hansel had, got in trouble with the Shade Tree Commission. And this is where I was leading to before when I said I'm also a concerned citizen. Not I, but his property also intersects a neighbor on 670 Newtown Road. I don't know these folks. I think my wife and I tried to look her up. I think her name is Marnie something. Beautiful house. It kind of sits up on the hill. Their yard is terraced. You could see it from Newtown Road, Stone Home. And he destroyed these really expensive plantings of hers. I think they may be in that business. They might be in the horticultural business. And so he had a violent thing with her, and her husband, I think. And so he confessed this to me, because in the beginning, you know, as you would expect with a new next-door neighbor, I'm very cordial. I brought him something to welcome him to the neighborhood, and he was talking to me very candidly. He said, yeah, she said I destroyed her trees, and then she starts taking pictures of my kids, and it's got really weird. And I was like, oh, really? He says, yeah. He says, so I had to give her $13,000. He said, but I make that in an hour, so what do I care? And I was like, oh, okay. And then there's me, there's Aliba that I'm talking about, and then there's the next property, which was owned by Dr. Moriello. I believe his widow, Mrs. Moriello, still lives there by herself or with her daughter. At one point in the construction of Aliba's driveway, he changed his entire driveway to blocks. And so he had his men with handheld saws cutting out in the open, and concrete dust everywhere. Now, he has a big driveway. It goes from one end of his property, loops around, and comes near mine, and then there's an arm that goes up here, and that's the closest part, because my driveway and my air conditioning units are right there. So when he finally works his way around, which was at the end of the job, he has these guys cutting pavement, and I had become on a first-name basis with his main contractor, a guy named Aziz. And I said, Z, you guys can't be putting that smoke in my yard. I mean, it's going to go in, I'm going to have to shut off my air conditioner. Who knows, I'm going to have my ducts cleaned. And he's like, well, I said, you get a wet saw, or you build a cut tent, and your guys have to work from the cut tent, come over, and he says, all right, I'll get him to stop. I was working outside. 5 minutes later, the smoke is pouring back into my yard, and where's the chief now? Chief left. I was going to say, I almost needed the cops, because I was going to go over there and take somebody's head off. I started running, and then Aliba himself comes out, and Aziz grabbed me, because I was going to hit somebody. I was PO'd. And he said, no, it's only going to be 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes. So I said, okay. Well, guess what? He cut this deal with our township to make some more pervious surface. So all he did was he busted up the concrete patio that was around his pool, which probably is 25 years old anyway, and guess what? He put blocks in. Now, that pool was all the way up near Mrs. Moriello. And just a week or two ago, I saw him once again. He's got the guys cutting blocks with no cover, and all the dust was blowing towards poor Mrs. Moriello. And I was going to do it. I restrained myself. I said, I'm not going to get in this. But this guy is simply dangerous. And from day one, our township has known about it. And from day one, they have mollycoddled him, all except Andy Pancoast, a very nice code enforcement officer who was rough on him. I wanted to just read you a couple of the emails. No, I'm not. I mean, this could take more time than we have this evening. I don't want to put you through that. I will send them to you. But again, the fact that he had a fraudulent plumber do that thing was just the tip of the iceberg. Andy had to shut his project down. The contractors worked through the work stoppage. He had to shut it down again. But it was like that for a year. And he completely redid the interior of his home. So then, after that, he fights through with Andy, gets all of that done. Then comes the outside. And what he did was, from God knows where, and this Aliba loves a bargain. We've had tractor trailers come up in the front of his house, drop off a trailer, and it's full of stuff from the Middle East. He's a dual citizenship Egyptian. He's in Egypt right now, I believe. He goes there every summer. He says he has a house just as big in Egypt as he does here. He says he runs 32 businesses, some in Egypt, some here, et cetera, et cetera. But he loves a bargain, and he's like a lot of guys. We're happy to admit we got a bargain on a suit or whatever, but he gets bargains on everything. So he trucks in truckload after truckload after truckload of dirt, because when I was describing Chaumont Drive to you, I did so for a reason. Because now, on the right-hand side of Chaumont, every house slopes up except his. His sits like a flying saucer because he leveled the whole goddamn thing. Without asking for a grading permit, without asking for expert input, nothing. Regraded his whole goddamn property with soil from who knows where, probably 3 Mile Island, because that was probably the cheapest he could find, and it's in my yard, most of it. and our township quickly found out about this, okay, but did nothing. There is a report from November of 23. I had started to make a little noise, but I wanted desperately to preserve neighborhood peace. So I didn't get official until like 24. I started talking through Andy. We kept things on the QT. I just wanted to know if anything was going on with this guy and what you were going to do about it. Because running alongside our properties, I have an estate fence. I have one of those expensive black aluminum fences. He buried it. He literally buried it by raising up his property like this. His property was raised nearly 4 feet higher than it used to be in some spots, all on my side, because I'm the downhill side. Rocks, dirt were coming my way, and then we had a storm, and that was what broke it for me. We had one of those big storms. We've had like 3 or 4 in the last several years, including that Hurricane Ida, but I don't think it was Ida, because Ida was like 21. But it was probably one of the 3-inch storms. You know, around here, if you get an inch of rain in a day, that's a big storm. But these were like 3 inches. And I had to go running outside, my son and I, because his mud, no silt fencing, just dirt everywhere in his yard, sprinkle grass seed, no, what do you call it, hay or anything to hold it down. And all of a sudden, his entire yard's coming in my backyard, and it's heading for my pool. And so my son and I had a couple of 2x12 boards. We were in pouring rain. We're putting boards like this. I grabbed old suitcases. I was putting anything that would potentially deflect water to run it around past my pool, because God forbid, if all that mud came in, you know, my pool's ruined. And then it was running down this way along that side of my house, and I took water in my basement for the first time because of this guy. And I've got a nearly completely finished basement. It went in my media room. I had to rip up the rug. The dampness has still never left. And this goes on, and I immediately then started making noise at the township. And I was directed to Mr. Norsini. And I said, I'd be happy, you know, you're the chairman of the department. I'd be happy to speak to someone else. I tried to speak to Trish Sherwin. I did speak to her physically. When I walked in for the first time and I introduced myself and I told Trish and Andy where I lived, they both went like this, "Oh, we're sorry for you, dude. You know, you live next to this guy, Aliba." And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "That's why I'm here." I kept asking for somebody to do something. I particularly was worried about my yard, how it looked and how it affected water runoff, but also what it did. My fence was now in a hole. My property now sits in a hole on his side. I've gotten an opinion from a realtor that he may have cost me as much as 20% diminution in value of my home. Take a ride by my house. Just guess to yourself what you think it might be worth and take 20% off. And so I was getting no satisfaction. And then I began to demand, on March the 5th of 25, I demanded a meeting with Mr. White. Mr. White, shockingly to me, since he works for me, indicated he was basically too busy to talk to me. And I was really incensed. So I called Mr. Child's predecessor, Jack, who was my commissioner, and I told him what was going on. He said, "I'll see what I can do. I'll see if I can get you a meeting." So he called and got me a meeting. But the meeting wasn't for a month, till April the 10th, 2025. In my second right-to-know request, I made a right-to-know request several months ago. It was ignored. I got the standard letter. I got the standard letter from Melissa Cohn asking for an additional 30 days, but I got nothing thereafter. And I told Mr. Rice's associate, I told Mr. Rice, "Where are my documents? Where's my permits? I want to see what permits you issued this guy." And I got nothing. So I repeated the request, and more recently, I got a right-to-know response, which has hundreds of pages redacted for various reasons, and I don't necessarily agree I'll put my lawyer hat back on for just a second. I don't necessarily agree with the reason for those redactions, but you are not subject to those redactions because you are the township. You can ask to see past the attorney-client privilege things and other things, and you can look at those. But in those documents,
Mr.
what I got,
Stagliano,
yes,
I just want to pause you for 1 second.
sure.
So we are a board of very limited jurisdiction. What we can do is if there is a violation of our zoning ordinance, if there is a violation of our permitting requirements, we can go out and issue a notice of violation. We can give the homeowner 30 days to come into compliance. We're required to do that. If they do not come into compliance, they can also appeal to the zoning hearing board. I know from having read your memo and having some familiarity with the dispute that you're describing, I know that that has happened in this case multiple times. We're not, however, a board of unlimited jurisdiction. We cannot say that as a result of the infiltration of soil from one property into the other, you've got to prevent that from happening. We're not a court of equity. We can't say you have to go in and excavate your fill. It would be helpful if what you could do, because we are running out of time this evening, if you could let us know what specific ordinance you believe has been violated and what specific remedy you want from us. We can turn our attention to that. We do not need, however, the blow-by-blow that you are giving us, in part because we have read your memo, we have asked staff for the background. We are, I promise you, familiar. Just tell us what the ordinance is, tell us what remedy you're looking for, and we can either tell you that's something we can do, or we can tell you this is really something that's going to be the subject of a private nuisance complaint between you and your neighbor, and the township is not an appropriate forum for it. So,
Respectfully, Mr. Rice wrote me the same thing after they filed the citation against him, and they picked impervious cover violation. That's it. They didn't, this is, what they did was like if he had walked across Radnor Chester Road and robbed the TD Bank coming from the high school, and then he left the bank, they cited him for jaywalking.
that's fine,
But
but
not the
what
bank robbery.
ordinances do you believe that he is in violation of now?
So I wrote Mr. Rice, and Mr. Rice said to me, if there's an ordinance that he's violated, let me know and we'll charge him. And I've written him 20 times. The main ordinance is, the murder one here, is that he regraded without permission.
There's an exception to the grading requirements in our township. If you grade for less than, and I forget what it is, like 10 cubic yards and not more than 3 vertical feet, then you're not required to have a permit. I don't know.
He graded 2 acres.
Yeah,
and-
I don't
and
know.
More than 3 or 4 feet.
I don't know how much he actually put down. I don't know how much vertical there is, but in order to determine that, we would probably need to go in and do some kind of, if we're a year down the road, I'm not sure that we're going to be able to hunt that down. But that being said, I hear you. That he has overgraded the property and he needs a permit. We can look into it.
Respectfully, it's not a contention. My right-to-know request that was finally honored, I saw a report for the first time from an independent engineer named Chris Fantuzzi. He advised everyone, he just picked it out of the air. He said, the northwest section of this guy's property looks like it's been raised. Is this part of this driveway permit application? Should we be doing something about this? Directing those questions to the township, nothing was done.
I hear you. The only reason I say contention there is because I want to leave room for the possibility that he's going to disagree, and to the extent that we're going to be asked to wade in, I don't want to pre-adjudicate the issue. I'm not saying that you're wrong in any way. Is there any other ordinance that you contend he is
Sure, he
violating?
put in a whole sprinkler system in his front yard.
Okay,
You need to get a permit for that. He did nothing.
Okay.
Didn't get a permit.
okay.
You can't bring in soil of the quantity that he did without getting it cleared as, quote, clean fill. He didn't do that. He did this under cover of night, like everything he does. He does all these things on Saturdays when he knows the township isn't looking. But my problem, and here's why, I'm not after your jurisdiction, I'm after your common sense. I want you 6 to investigate what your employees have done or not done. That's what I want. Because this thing stinks. This thing stinks to high heaven. I can't get common sense, simple answers to simple questions. I hassled him 3 times a week. What are you doing? What are you telling him? What are you going to charge him with? And he was like Yoda. He said, I'm devising a path forward. And I said, what path? What are you talking about? And then after 2 years of this, my meetings here, whatever, they finally charge him, and they charge him with a stupid impervious cover, and they don't do any, and then they say in writing from Mr. Rice, they're going to keep me involved, they're going to check with me before they do anything. They cut a deal. They remove the sidewalk around the pool, he's fine. Dealing in no way with my main complaints. My fence, my fence is still partly underground, now on my side, because so much of his dirt has come onto my property that I've got a hill here. The fence is now there, and then, you know, you go up to his property, where I simply asked that in that northwest side, documented by an independent engineer's report, that you return that to status quo. I don't care about the rest of his property.
So we're not,
And I've asked that.
we are not a court of equity. We cannot require him to do that. We cannot issue that order. What we can do is we can issue a notice of violation. He may choose to come into compliance himself. We will look into the question of whether or not he's in compliance with our ordinances. That I can promise you.
Thank you. I do not want to overburden you. May I send you the couple of reports that I've just referenced? They're short. They're 2-pagers. They're not, you know, not real involved things. Because you also have, when that same engineering firm's major principal, Roger Phillips, was asked to look at the settlement that they were proposing of this impervious cover thing.
I'm going to pause you right now.
Yeah,
Please do
just-
not tell me the story.
Can
Send me a report.
I send it to you? Sure. Because he
Yes.
also confirmed, in his language, not mine, the illegal regrading that was done.
That is fine, but what I'm going to ask you to do is put together a motion for summary judgment. I take, and I mean that, you know, metaphorically,
Figuratively,
obviously.
sure. Mhm.
I take the position, I don't know if any other person has said this before, but I take the position that you have the right to petition your government. You got a First Amendment right to get my email, so I will never block you. But you sent me 30 emails on Sunday. My phone was going off the hook. My watch buzzes. I thought I was having a stroke.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
That's fine, but it is the least effective way to capture my attention and empathy in this. So take some time.
Sure.
Put together your motion for summary judgment, attach your exhibits.
Sure.
Send me one, I will respond to it, I'll read the whole thing, we will talk to staff. We will
I
do
think
what we
I
can.
think that's an excellent idea, Mr.
But I
Morgan.
do want to stress to you, it sounds to me like you have a claim for a private common law nuisance claim. The statute of limitations for that is running. It does not sound to me like the township is going to be able to solve all of your problems, and while I am not your lawyer, I am a lawyer, and I just want to make sure that you're aware you may choose to pursue that in lieu of looking to us as the final arbiter of this.
But do you folks have any idea how much time and money has been urinated away by the township because of the conduct of Mr. Norsini, the counsel of Mr. Rice, and the inactivity of Mr. White? You have no idea what is going on here. And I'm really, this is my main concern as a township tax-paying citizen. You have to take a look beyond the motion for summary judgment as to the specific issue of whether I have been, suffered a violation by my neighbor, which I clearly have, and nobody disputes that. Everybody kind of admits it without saying it. But that's not the whole thing. More serious, more threatening, more problematic is what your employees have not done.
I will
Or they have
investigate
done.
that. I will absolutely investigate that. I will look into it. I do, however, want to say, so that you are aware, we all drop the ball from time to time. This would be a deviation from an incredibly high level of standard, from an incredibly high standard of care and skill from Mr. Norsini, Mr. White, and Mr. Rice. Doesn't mean that the ball wasn't dropped here, and I will look into it.
Thank you, because there was no high standard of care here. Actually, just the exact opposite. Everything
Would you
was
include
ignored.
the right to know that you did not, your
I'm sorry?
first right to know, include the information on that?
Can I ask one question about that right to know? When Melissa provided me, for example, a piece of correspondence and it has attachments on that correspondence, I am unable to open those attachments. Do you know if I can?
Talk to Melissa.
Like Andy Panko sent a lot of photos, and I didn't know whether I could access those photos.
You generally have to click through on the PDF. Sometimes there are multiple levels within the same PDF, and you'll just have to keep clicking through those links.
Yeah, it wasn't a link. You know, it was like a regular email with attachments, and the attachments are listed, and I I couldn't even click on them. You know, they're just like dummies there, and I couldn't even open them. I'll ask Melissa. She's been quite responsive. So, yeah, I appreciate that. The only thing I asked her, and I didn't get an answer to this question, which is important to me, who gives her her marching orders, if anyone, regarding when she inserts redactions and takes information off of the right to know? Does someone tell her what to
I
do?
can answer that question. So here's the way it works, Mr. Stagliano. She's the official appointed right-to-know officer, right? She handles, the township gets 300 right-to-know requests a year. Since 2009. Sorry, it's in the thousands a year. It's gone up.
I was going to say one a day didn't sound that bad, but no.
Well, it's in the thousands. I mean,
Okay.
it's, since 2009, when the law changed, she's been the right-to-know officer. She handles 95% of all those. If she has a question about the legality of releasing records, she deals with my office, Joel Steinman in my office, who's an attorney, that's been doing the same thing since 2009 with Melissa Kahn. So they have a, you know, back and forth.
So it's input from your office then? is
Yeah,
it?
absolutely.
Okay. Now, I figured.
Yeah.
But when I asked her, she didn't answer me, so I didn't know what the secret was.
And if
but
you
she
read
didn't
the
answer.
right-to-know law, there's like 32 exceptions to it.
Mhm.
So, you know, some of those exceptions are things like attorney-client privilege. Some of them are not even records.
See, I struggle with the attorney-client privilege because, as I started with, by four, I'm the township. I'm the township of Radnor. Shouldn't be in be perceived as being in an adversarial position to the township of Radnor. I'm a victim.
I understand why you say
and a
that, but
citizen.
that's not how the OOR, the Commonwealth
Okay,
Court, has
all right.
interpreted it. Thank you so much,
Thank
I
you.
really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
guys. I appreciate your time.
Yes.
Thank you. It's public comment?
Good evening, Roberta Winters, 326 Williams Road in Rosemont. The reason I'm here is just to reinforce my request to ask for some ongoing monitoring of our traffic in Radnor Township. I think probably in the next